The Scott Jennings Show is proudly sponsored by Lear Capital. Since 1997, Lear has helped Americans protect their retirement accounts and savings with physical gold and silver. With thousands of five-star reviews and $3 billion in transactions, Lear is who I trust to help me buy gold and silver. Visit LearScott.com.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Japan's Prime Minister visiting the White House. We have her comments in just a moment. The First Lady of New York City has made a series of troubling, violent, and racist social media posts. We have the reporter today who broke that story. March Madness is here. We'll keep you updated on basketball this afternoon. Some airports are in chaos. Chad Stahl with the TSA in Washington is in today for a live interview on this show. And a new political news startup has folks talking in Washington, D.C. We have the founder of that right here on the show today. It is Thursday, March the 19th. This is Scott Jennings reporting for Salem, and we are broadcasting live from Louisville, Kentucky today. And not going to lie, I'll be keeping an eye on the NCAA basketball tournament while we do the show today. I'll keep you updated on things that jump out as the tournament gets underway. The first thing you need to know, if you're in the state of Ohio, it's not looking too hot. TCU, the 9 seed, with a 15-point lead on the Ohio State University, 39-24 at the half. Troy and Nebraska, that's a 13-4 game in the seeding, and it is a close game right now. About 9 minutes left, and it's 18-15 in favor of the Cornhuskers. We'll keep an eye on the NCAA tournament as the show wears on. Now, for other news. The left in America is reeling from a bombshell report in the New York Times about Cesar Chavez, long celebrated as a civil rights icon and a champion of farm workers. He is now at the center of a stunning and deeply troubling controversy. This week, his closest ally and co-founder of the United Farm Workers, Dolores Huerta, came forward and accused Chavez of sexually abusing her decades ago. She says she stayed silent for more than 60 years to protect the movement that they built. Her allegation follows a major investigation that uncovered claims that Chavez groomed and abused multiple girls, in some cases minors, during his time leading the movement. The fallout from this has been immediate. Events honoring Chavez are being canceled across the country. Organizations are distancing themselves, and even places and holidays bearing his name are now under review. Here's the bottom line. This is a moment where the left is being forced to grapple with something they usually reserve for others, separating a political hero from deeply disturbing personal allegations. You can honor the cause of farm workers while telling the truth about this man. And right now, that truth is impossible to ignore. The global energy situation today is on edge and getting worse by the hour. Iran has now escalated attacks beyond Israel again, striking energy infrastructure in the Gulf, including a key facility in Qatar. And this is after Israel hit South Pars, the largest natural gas field in the world. The result, oil and gas prices are surging again, and the global energy market is starting to wobble a bit. At the same time, the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical shipping lanes on Earth, remains effectively under threat at all times. Iran has been targeting ships there, and now Iran's leadership, what's left of it, says the strait may never return to normal. We'll see what the Americans and the Israelis and the rest of the Arab states have to say about that. The United States has responded with strikes on Iranian missile sites near the strait, while Europe is scrambling to keep oil flowing and even floating emergency measures to boost their own supply. And then there's President Trump's words. He has issued a stark warning: no more attacks on South Pars unless Iran hits Qatar again, in which case he says the U.S. will, quote, massively blow up the entire gas field. Bottom line, this conflict is continuing to send ripples across energy and financial markets. It is right now a direct threat to the world's energy supply. And when energy wobbles, everything else tends to follow. Now, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says, in his view, ultimately a coalition, international coalition, will have to band together to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. Let's hear Secretary Bessent in cut number 4.
I think the president's been very clear here that he believes that those who are benefiting from these actions in their economies should contribute. And I think over time we will likely see a clarification here that that NATO, maybe some of our Asian allies will not directly get involved in the fighting as we continue the bombing campaign. I would be surprised that if eventually there isn't some kind of a global coalition to escort ships through the Strait of Hormuz. It'd be very disappointing for those who benefit the most not to do something.
We'll have more on Operation Epic Fury later in the show with our national security expert, Rebecca Heinrichs. You don't want to miss that conversation. Now, President Trump has the Japanese Prime Minister in the White House today. They're in there as we speak. They're in the Oval Office, and he loves her, and the feeling is mutual. Takaichi is there, and we have some interesting clips. Let's listen to cut number 9 here. This is the Japanese Prime Minister, Sanai Takaichi, talking about how she believes Donald Trump is a world peacemaker. Cut 9.
But even against that backdrop, I firmly believe that it is only you, Donald, who can achieve peace across the world. And to do so, I am ready to reach out to many of the partners in the international community to achieve our objective together.
And here's one more cut from this meeting going on in the Oval Office. It's cut 7. This is President Trump talking about the United States' relationship with Japan. Cut 7.
We're going to be speaking about it today. We've had tremendous support and relationship with Japan on everything. And I believe that based on statements that were given to us yesterday, the day before yesterday, having to do with Japan, they are really stepping up to the plate. Yes.
It's a full day in the White House for the Japanese Prime Minister. She's there in the Oval Office. They're having lunch. They're having meetings. There's a dinner tonight. And we'll keep an eye on all the developments there as President Trump meets with his friend and ally, the Prime Minister of Japan. Up on Capitol Hill, Markwayne Mullin cleared through a Senate committee today, and he is on his way to being confirmed to be the next Department of Homeland Security Secretary. In committee today, 8-7 was the vote. Rand Paul, the Republican, went against. John Fetterman, the Democrat, went for. So one defection for each party, but Markwayne Mullin moves along in the process. Now, if you've been following the story of Joe Kent, this is the White House counterterrorism advisor who just resigned, citing his opposition to the war in Iran. Well, here's some news on that. Turns out he is under FBI investigation for leaking classified information. Of course, Kent, upon his departure, immediately ran to do an interview on Tucker Carlson's podcast to continue to attack the president and spread conspiracy theories about Israel. But we now know he is under investigation for leaking classified information. Numerous news outlets are reporting this. We'll see what laws Mr. Kent broke while serving in the White House. We'll stay on top of this one for you. Airport news. If you're going, go early. Airports across the country continue to report long lines as TSA agents, now having missed 2 paychecks, are not coming to work. The chaos continues and increases by the day. Of course, this is the Democratic plan. Recklessly cause chaos in America and then somehow blame it on Donald Trump. Now, later in the show, we have the Deputy Director of TSA, Chad Stahl, coming on here to update us on the latest travel disruptions. For instance, in Houston, more than 40% of TSA officers called out of work earlier this week, and that's one of 3 major airports where over a third of the TSA workforce called out. New Orleans and Atlanta were the other 2. So this is what's happening. Democrats continue to keep TSA shut down. They won't pay the workers, and Now America suffers the consequences. Fort Lauderdale, Florida, a Haitian-born man living there has been stripped of his U.S. citizenship after orchestrating a massive COVID relief fraud scheme. Stole about $3.8 million from programs meant to help struggling small businesses. Prosecutors say he lied during the naturalization process while actively committing the fraud. Federal judge has now revoked this man's citizenship. I think more of this, please. If you cheat the system to get in and then cheat the taxpayers while you're here, you can and should lose it all, including the most precious thing, your American citizenship. News on aches and pains coming in from Relief Factor. This is an important development. Relief Factor has upgraded the already trusted formula. They've added a premium black pepper extract, and that's going to help your body absorb the high-quality key nutrients in Relief Factor more efficiently. If you're already taking it, it gets even better. If you haven't made the decision, now is the time. You have really nothing to lose. It's $19.95 to begin the 3-week quick start. That's how you want to do this. And where you get it is very simple. ReliefFactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF. ReliefFactor.com or 1-800-4RELIEF. Get yourself out of pain. Get rid of the aches with Relief Factor. We're going to take a break. When we come back, there's a new political news startup in Washington that's got folks talking. We've got the founder coming up next on The Scott Jennings Show. Stay with us.
Iran has unleashed missile attacks on Israel, and across the Holy Land today, children are watching the skies for rockets. Mothers and fathers are listening closely for red alert sirens. These sirens give you 15 seconds to get to the nearest bomb shelter. The situation, folks, is serious, and the threat is real. Right now, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews is on the ground preparing large-scale distributions of life-saving food, first aid, emergency essentials for civilian security personnel, and ensuring hospitals, emergency rooms, and shelters are fully stocked with critical and life-saving medical supplies. Aid is all focused here on protecting Israel's most vulnerable people, the sick, the elderly, children, and families who are in great need. But the fellowship needs your most generous gift today to make this work possible, and now is your time to stand with Israel's most vulnerable. To rush your gift, call 888-488-IFCJ. That's 888-488-IFCJ, or go online at ifcj.org. ifcj.org. Please help this effort today.
News, comment, and the stories and facts the mainstream media refuses to discuss. It's The Scott Jennings Show.
Common sense for the American people here on Thursday, March the 19th. March Madness Thursday. The tournament is underway. We'll check in on basketball in a little while. But first, I have a question for you. Does Washington, D.C. need its own Page 6? What with all the drama on Capitol Hill, there's plenty of content, I think. And my next guest has been a Capitol Hill reporter for enough time that she thought it was time to bring that sort of inside baseball scoop to you, the people. And joining us now, fresh off launching her new website, Sources Say, is that reporter, Julie Grace Brufke. Julie Grace, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show. Glad you're with us.
Excited to be here, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've known each other for a while and always trusted your reporting and was excited about your new startup. So let's first of all tell people how to find it. The name of it is Sources Say. So on the traditional browser, that's sourcessay.news. And you can follow Julie here at Julie Grace B. And the website is at sourcessay_news. So a number of places to get it. So Julie Grace, tell me, how and why did you decide to launch Sources Say? And it came out this week. How's it going so far?
So far, I'm very excited about this. I feel like I've long kind of liked the palace intrigue and kind of the member drama. And in reality, I feel like Washington kind of runs on gossip and who's fighting and who's sleeping together, and all of that stuff kind of impacts the policy long term. So I feel like hopefully people can kind of learn about policy while being entertained. I feel like we're kind of living in the prime era on both sides of the aisle on entertainment politics. So I kind of want to bring the vibes of like everything everyone's talking about in their group texts into a website and make news a little fun. So that's so I love Oppo research, so we'll be seeing a lot of that.
Okay, so are people so far, and you're a couple of days in here, are they so far being forthcoming with the kinds of scoops that you need? I mean, I'm looking at your website. It says sources say news, rumors, and all the tea. Is all the tea spilling into your text messages? Are people asking you and telling you, oh, I've got something for you?
They are. And I mean, I feel like I've long been like, I feel like my best scoops have long come at happy hour. And I feel like it's that kind of fodder and fun stuff that I want to bring to the site. And I've gotten a lot of exciting tips in the past couple days. So I feel like newsletter official launch next Thursday. And I sat down yesterday for a podcast episode, which should be airing next week with Dan Crenshaw, where there was a big airing of grievances about everything after losing his primary. So he had a lot of hot takes that I think should make some news, and sat down with Eric Swalwell, which should be also an interesting episode that we've got coming up. So definitely have some fun, saucy content for everybody.
And I'm looking at the site here, and you've got a podcast. Will you be doing that every week, I assume? And it looks like your first interview might have been with the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
It was down in Durrell when I ran into you. So we were kind of chatting about some of the ups and downs in his job, what he can get done, and his feud with Thomas Massey, I feel like was a big topic for us. So it was definitely a fun interview. He's always a good time. So.
You've been covering right out of the gate, and I sit here broadcasting from Kentucky today. You've been covering some Kentucky political news as some of your first scoops. You want to tell us about that?
I have. So Ryan Dotson, who's running to replace Andy Barr, I received some information. He was featured on the reality TV show Vanderpump Rules and Came Under Fire a couple years back, which I love when reality TV meets Congress. I feel like they're two of my passions. But he came up on the Ashley Madison list, so I received some information on that and the coordinates. So it looks like it's legit. His wife, in a statement, denied that she thinks that that's a real thing, and his team was like, there's no way to prove this. So that's kind of where they stand. But yeah, it was kind of an interesting story.
How do you balance that? You get information or a tip, so you see something like that. You've got direct denials, from the people who were involved. You published it anyway. Sort of as a journalist, what sort of judgment do you go through there about whether to actually, put something like that on your site?
Yeah, well, I mean, as much as I love gossip, you always want to verify your gossip. So, I mean, had the coordinates there, had email addresses, and then you always want multiple sources on these things to be able to track it down. So, yeah, definitely want to remain a reliable journalist, even if giving some of the saucier, more personality-driven news.
All right, that's Julie Grace Brufke. She is the founder of the brand new breaking news and saucy content website called Sources Say, and she's a longtime Capitol Hill reporter, knows a lot of people, knows a lot of things. And if you want to go check this out, it's sourcessay.news, and on the X platform at Julie Grace B, and you also have a handle for the site itself. It's at sourcessay_news. Julie Grace, we wish you all the best in your new journalism venture, and we'll pay attention to your content closely and expect you to be here on the Scott Jennings Show unloading some of these scoops from time to time.
For sure. Would love to come back. I'm sure I'll have some fun stuff.
Okay, it's Julie Grace Brufke. The new site is Sources Say. My advice, check it out. She's going to be breaking some stuff, and in a midterm year, could be quite important. We'll take a break. More news when we come back. It's Scott Jennings here on Salem. Stay with us.
Gold and silver recently soared to record highs and then pulled back. So are precious metals still a good buy? Many Wall Street experts predict higher prices ahead. Why? Well, because we still have trillions in national debt, a declining dollar, and inflation that keeps shrinking our savings. Even with corrections along the way, gold remains a historical hedge for wealth protection. That's why Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer ditched the 60-40 stocks and bonds portfolio and is recommending up to 20% in precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call Lear Capital at 1-800-880-2424 for your free gold investment kit and learn how you could qualify for up to $20,000 in bonus gold. Lear Capital has over $3 billion in transactions and thousands of five-star reviews. Call 1-800-880-2424, 1-800-880-2424, or visit learscott.com.
Where leftist narratives go to die. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Okay, it's March Madness underway here on Thursday, March the 19th. A couple of games in progress. TCU, the 9 seed, beating Ohio State 41-30, about 15 minutes left in the second half. And the 13 seed Troy is playing Nebraska, the 4 seed, and the Cornhuskers up heading to halftime 41-23. So we're keeping an eye on the NCAA tournament. We're also keeping an eye frankly, on the White House today. The President of the United States has a world leader in the Oval Office and doing all sorts of things in the White House. It is the Japanese Prime Minister, Sanae Takaichi. She's a conservative, by the way, and they have a great relationship. But, when the president has these world leaders in the Oval, you can expect at least one, maybe 2 or 3 bangers. The president's already unleashed one today. I got to play this. Erica Donald's here. We're going to talk to Erica about education in a minute, but I had to get this in. The president gets asked about why he didn't tell Japan before we attacked Iran. You got to hear this in Cut 12.
Too much. When we go in, we went in very hard, and we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Okay? Why didn't you tell me about Pearl Harbor? Okay? Right? He's asking me, do you believe in surprise? I think much more so than us. And we had to surprise him, and we did. And because of that surprise, we knocked out, the first 2 days, we probably knocked out 50% of what and much more than we anticipated doing. So if I go and tell everybody about it, there's no longer a surprise, right? Okay, one more.
The President Trump, the funniest working comedian alive. I've maintained it from the beginning. Can always count on him for a zinger, particularly when these world leaders are in the Oval. Erica Donalds is coming up in just a moment. A quick word about our nation's 250th anniversary. Let's go back to March of 1775. St. John's Church in Richmond, and Patrick Henry rose to speak words that spurred the American Revolution and continue to echo through American history. Give me liberty or give me death. As we celebrate America's 250th, it's never been more important to reflect on our nation's values and commit ourselves to moving our country forward. Now, my friends at Americans for Prosperity have created a terrific way to celebrate this historic year through the One Small Step initiative. This is a campaign built on a simple idea. It is that liberty requires courage and conviction and an active citizenry. For nearly 250 years, Americans have preserved liberty through small, deliberate steps. And now it's on us, in the face of tremendous opposition to these ideals, to ensure these freedoms and all of this ideology, this American exceptionalism, passes on to the next generation. If you believe, as I do, that freedom is worth defending, I encourage you to visit the A250toolkit.com/Scott, A250toolkit.com/Scott, and add your voice for liberty. That's A250toolkit.com/Scott. All right, it's common sense for the American people here. And tomorrow marks the 1-year anniversary of President Trump signing the executive order to eliminate the Federal Department of Education. The move, of course, faced incredible scrutiny from teachers' unions and their supporters, but it was bold, and it refocused our reforming America's education system on things that actually work instead of things like bloated bureaucracies. For decades, taxpayers had funneled more and more money into the Department of Education with little to nothing to show for it. And at the same time, individual states took education reform head on, and they became models for fixing broken systems. So, with the Department of Education shrinking and eventually on its way out, what comes next for our education system? Joining us now to discuss it all, my friend from Florida, Erica Donalds, a nationally recognized education entrepreneur, a policy leader, founder and CEO of the Education Freedom Foundation, and the America First Policy Institute Chair of Education Opportunity. Erica, good to see you here. Good to hear your voice. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. I appreciate it.
Well, it was good to see you in Florida the other day, and Byron as well. And, of course, we wish you all luck on your campaign for governor there. But I want to talk to you about education today, and specifically the Department of Education. President Trump actually did something that Republican presidents say they want to do usually, and that's get rid of this thing. And he's the first person to actually try to do it. Tell us why that was the right move to get rid of this unnecessary agency, at least in the eyes of many conservatives.
Yeah, well, the public education system in the nation has really failed the American people. And it does start with the last 40 years and trillions of dollars in this federal Department of Education that has done nothing to improve the performance of American students. Instead, it has been a power base for teachers' unions and left-wing ideology to be pushed down using a carrot and stick approach with funding from the federal government to force left-wing ideology and bad education policy into our schools, into our districts, and take that power away from states. So President Trump was right to campaign on this, received a mandate for it, and a year ago did pass that executive order and sign it, that he would be returning education to the states and getting rid of this bureaucracy that's totally unnecessary and a complete failure.
You are the policy expert. I'm just a layperson. I do have kids who attend schools. But it seems to me that the one and only metric by which we should judge whether something is working in education is, are people learning? Are the test scores getting any better? And you look at over the lifetime of the Department of Education, not only are the scores not getting better, lately they're getting worse. Does anyone in the education bureaucracy and the teachers unions, do they ever have an answer to this question? It's the one thing that's so obvious. This is broken. The test scores prove it, and yet they want to continue on with bureaucracies and union bosses setting policy. Seems crazy to me.
Well, you're absolutely right. Only about a third of American children are proficient in reading and math. I mean, I have 3 children. Can you imagine how angry I would be if only one of them could read and do math on grade level? That is how we, the American public, should be at our education system. And so we have to make changes. That starts with eliminating this unnecessary bureaucracy and waste of federal funds, returning education to the states, and encouraging states to be those competitive places where the democracy and innovation thrive and they can learn from one another. You look at states like Mississippi that have outperformed in reading, of all things, right? Because they've implemented the science of reading in such a careful and thoughtful way. And so we want to see more of that from the states. The way to do that is to get the federal government out of the way and encourage that competition.
Yeah, that Mississippi miracle, we call it, it has really been a revelation. And I had Governor Reeves from Mississippi on the show a few weeks ago, and he was explaining how it took about 10 years for them to implement these reforms. But the response from students and the test scores just improved dramatically. But even a prominent Democrat came on this show this week, Rahm Emanuel. He's been in Mississippi recently, and he is saying we've got to export this model, using phonics, for instance, in reading education. We have to export this around the country. It is true. If people lead and you get results, people will also follow. And I think that's what you're seeing out of these primarily red states with Republican governors and Republican legislatures. They're saying, we're throwing out the old union, force playbook. We're doing the reforms that work. Tell us a little bit about the effort to spread the Mississippi ideas to other states, and also maybe talk to us a little bit about the resistance that you run into when you get into these blue areas where the teachers' unions are very powerful.
Yeah, well, teaching children properly is difficult. I've started 6 classical charter schools that all use explicit phonics. We've had to train hundreds of teachers. And how to teach phonics is very repetitive. And it's not like the whole language, very humanities-driven way of teaching that we've allowed our education system to embrace, which has not allowed our results to thrive. You're also talking about the competition coming from school choice and from better performance of students who are in choice environments that the teachers union also hates because they're losing power to choice environments in places like Florida, now Texas, and others. But we know that Americans thrive in competitive environments. We have more innovation when we have competition, and it rises all boats across the board. So we need both. We need best practices across the country, and we need free market competition.
Yeah, and I agree with you that the federal bureaucracy often gets in the way of all of this. So the president signed this executive order about a year ago to eliminate the Department of Education. And I've heard Linda McMahon, the secretary, say, she's the only cabinet secretary whose job it is to eliminate her own job. And it is quite a bit smaller, and they have slimmed it down quite a bit. But it would take an act of Congress, I think, to get rid of the Department of Education once and for all. What do you think? Does the political will exist in Washington to finally do it?
Well, you follow these things as closely as I do, Scott. We know it's going to be very difficult with the filibuster in place to eliminate the Department of Education through Congress. But I think Linda McMahon and her team have done an excellent job so far because they're able to prove that other departments can handle some of the major responsibilities of the department. They made the interagency agreements. We're up to 9 now. The majority of functions of the department, aside from the student loan portfolio, are now being handled by other departments that are more well suited. Labor is doing workforce. The Department of State is investigating foreign influence in our higher education system. HHS is handling student mental health. I think as you see those contracts play out and they're working for the stakeholders in the states, for parents and districts, that Congress can then see this is already working. Why not make it law?
One final question on a little bit of breaking news. The story came out yesterday that the College Board, which is in charge of the AP program, admitted they had dumbed down their test questions. They've lowered the threshold for passing these advanced classes. You're an education policy expert. What's better, lower standards or higher standards? Because it seems like everybody's lowering their standards, at least if you read this story about the College Board.
Unfortunately, we're seeing this as a trend across the country. It's really exacerbated, including grade inflation, not just for AP courses and tests, but across the board. We're seeing dramatic grade inflation. And now there are studies coming out showing that grade inflation actually harms students' ability to perform in college at the higher levels. We're seeing massive growth in graduation rates and yet lower proficiency in those same states and districts that are having record graduation rates. We're lying to our parents, we're lying to our students, and we have to raise the bar across the board if we're really going to be serious about improving academic excellence in this country. And we have to in order to be globally competitive.
Couldn't agree with you more. That voice you're hearing, Erica Donalds, education policy expert, and I have to say, wife of Byron Donalds, congressman from Florida and quite likely the next governor, which makes you, I don't know if you know this, but that quite likely makes you the next first lady of Florida. So we look forward to talking about the campaign in the near future, but that's going on this year down in the Sunshine State. Erica, thanks for coming on the show. Have a quick word from our friends at Patriot Mobile. Now, most wireless companies don't give a hoot about what you believe in. In fact, they may believe in different things than you do, but Patriot Mobile cares, and they don't just want your business. They want to invest in your values. They believe freedom is worth defending, and they use the bills that they collect to provide premium wireless service to fund the Christian conservative movement in the United States of America. Switching is not a hassle. It's easier than ever. You keep your number, you keep your phone, or upgrade it, whatever you want. But it takes mere minutes. This is the defining year. America 250, Patriot Mobile is with us. So let's stand with Patriot Mobile. Go to patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code Scott and get a free month. patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT. Make the switch today. We'll take a break and come back with more on The Scott Jennings Show right after this.
Portions of The Scott Jennings Show are sponsored in part by Americans for Prosperity.
Thursday, March 19th, quick check of the NCAA tournament scoreboard. My alma mater is underway, University of Louisville, about 10 minutes to go in the first half, leading South Florida 17-9, go Cards. That TCU-Ohio State game, about 9 minutes to go, and Ohio State has cut the deficit to 5, 49-44 now. TCU leads, but it was much bigger just a few minutes ago. They're at the half where Nebraska leads Troy 41-25, and just underway, Wisconsin taking on High Point. So it's March Madness Thursday, and we're keeping an eye on that here at the Scott Jennings Show. Also yesterday, want to make sure we mention this, 6 fallen heroes from Operation Epic Fury came home to Dover Air Force Base. Today, General Kane, at this morning's Pentagon briefing, paid them tribute. Let's hear that in cut number 5.
I also had the honor yesterday, as the Secretary said, of traveling up to Dover with the President to welcome home our 6 fallen. It was an honor and a privilege for me to be there and to say thank you to their families. And I want to mention their names this morning. From the 6th Aerial Refueling Wing out of MacDill Air Force Base, Florida, but stationed as part of an active associate unit at Birmingham, Alabama, Major Alex Klenner, John Alex Klenner, Major Ariana Savino, she was posthumously promoted from captain to major, and Technical Sergeant Ashley Pruitt, the boom operator on that crew. From the 121st Aerial Fueling Ring, Ohio Air National Guard out of Rickenbacker Air National Guard Base in Columbus, Ohio, Captain Seth Koval, Captain Curtis Anks, and now Master Sergeant Tyler Simmons, who was also promoted in the boom operator on that crew.
General Kane today honoring the fallen heroes brought home to Dover yesterday in the dignified remains transfer. Scott Jennings reporting to you on Salem, and it is another day and another edition of one of our favorite segments called What in the World is Going On in Gavin Newsom's California. This latest story comes from Christopher Rufo over at City Journal. It is a doozy. A $114 million wildlife bridge over the 101. Now, on the surface, it sounds good. We're helping animals cross the road. Who would be against that? But look closer, and it's like everything else in California. You realize it's not that simple. This is a gold-plated monument to government excess. They broke ground on this back in 2022. The projected cost was $92 million, and the completion date was to be 2025. Well, it's now 2026. It's behind schedule. And now we're up to about $114 million, tens of millions over budget. What are taxpayers getting out of this? Well, not better roads. The traffic isn't any better. The communities aren't any safer. This is effectively a designer wildlife crossing for mountain lions and butterflies. Now, the story gets better. It's not just a bridge. It is also an ecosystem of consultants and bureaucrats and soil experts and habitat planners, environmental reviewers. It is a full-blown taxpayer-funded jobs program for professional plate spinners. Now, regular Californians are dealing with sky-high gas prices, a housing crisis, crime concerns, and failing infrastructure, but don't worry, the mountain lions and the butterflies are getting their luxury overpass. What a disconnect between what you ought to be doing and what you are doing with state government in California. You have massive cost here, delays, and expanding scope, very little real-world benefit for the people in California who are footing the bill. Here's another kicker. California is staring down right now billions in budget deficits in the coming years. So maybe, just maybe in California, it might be time to ask a basic question. Is this really the best use of our money? Is Gavin Newsom really the best person to be spending it? In Gavin Newsom's California, these questions seem to rarely get asked. We'll keep tabs on California as Gavin Newsom plots his 2028 presidential campaign. Before we go to break, I do want to remind you, you can still get in on the unforgettable Gulf of America cruise happening in November of this year. We will sail upon turquoise waters, place our toes in the white sand beaches. We will eat incredible food. We will have amazing conversations. Mike Gallagher, our friend Larry O'Connor from Town Hall is joining. We're going to have a lot of great conversations, and we want you to be part of it. Here's how you get in on it. Text the word cruise to 94878 or go to scottjenningsshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. We're going to take a break, listen to the top of the hour news headlines. When we come back, a deep dive into the latest on Operation Epic Fury. Stay with us on the Scott Jennings Show.
If the leftists haven't had enough yet, there's more. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Hour number 2 here on Thursday, March 19th. We've got our first barn burner of the NCAA tournament. Ohio State has stormed back to take a lead over TCU. It's now 57-55 with about 4.5 minutes to go. That was the first game of the tournament. TCU had a commanding lead throughout much of the game, but Ohio State, the 8th seed, coming back and Got a close one going on. Louisville Cardinals taking on South Florida in the first half. Louisville 27-16 ahead there. Nebraska crushing Troy now in the second half. Wisconsin's up 6 over High Point with about 10 minutes to go in the first half. So first day of the NCAA tournament. We'll keep an eye on that for you. Quick check of the other headlines. We are in day 33 of the shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security. We do have airport chaos out there. And at the end of this hour, I'll talk to Adam Stahl. He is the Deputy Director of TSA in Washington. We'll see how bad it is out there at America's airports. Now, Senate Leader John Thune has said just a little while ago that he may cancel the Senate's upcoming recess if Homeland Security is still shut down. That is a sign that talks between Republicans and Democrats could be advancing here. And Senator Thune said that Tom Homan is now meeting with a bipartisan group of senators today. This is a positive sign, I think, and one that Thune said he had been encouraging for a while. Homan has a lot of credibility on both sides of the aisle. We'll see what that produces. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu holding a press conference with the international media tonight at 8:30. We'll definitely keep an eye on that and bring you all the news from that at tomorrow's show. And we had the CIA Director Ratcliffe on Capitol Hill doing some testimony today. Let's take a listen to Ratcliffe here in cut number 3.
Is the Iranian regime committed to America's destruction, in your opinion?
Yes.
Does the Iranian regime have American blood on their hands since its founding in 1979?
Yes.
Has Iran plotted assassination attempts against Americans on American soil?
Yes.
Was Iran developing a nuclear weapon prior to our military action last June? And did Iran remain committed to developing a nuclear weapon in the lead up to this conflict?
Yes, so I want to clarify on that because there's been much talk about a fatwa against the development of a nuclear weapon.
Can you come back to that 1 second? Let me finish
yeah,
this.
You
that's
bet.
Okay. If left unchecked, do you think Iran would have the ability to develop missiles capable of reaching the United States?
Yes.
Did Israel force the U.S.'s hand and make us take action, as some have claimed?
No.
Director Gabbard, do you agree with the CIA director's assessment on that last question in particular?
All right, joining me now to react to that exchange on Capitol Hill and talk about broader foreign policy issues, one of the smartest minds on foreign policy and national security in the conservative movement, Rebecca Heinrichs is here from the Hudson Institute. Rebecca, you heard Ratcliffe there, and you heard Tulsi affirm it. When you heard that, what did you think?
Well, I thought, of course. I mean, this is all known information, very well documented. There's this, this idea that there's this conspiracy out there that the Israelis pressured President Trump to take this action. It's just nonsense. The United States has essentially been defending itself against the Iranian Revolution since 1979. There's blood on the hands of the Iran regime. You think about all of the veterans that have come home from the global war on terrorism. Many of them have been harmed by Iranian proxies, funded, armed, and equipped by Iran. So President Trump has taken this initiative to launch Operation Epic Fury in defense of the American people and our interests in collaboration with the Israelis. And of course, it was affirmed by both Ratcliffe and Gabbard today. And that should put those conspiracy theories to rest, I think.
Well, let's talk about some of those conspiracy theories because they are now being pushed by someone who was previously inside the White House, this character, Joe Kent, who was the director of the Counterterrorism Center. He resigned and said he couldn't work there any longer in good conscience because of this war against Iran. He, of course, has now run to Tucker Carlson's podcast and other conspiracy mongers out there to spread these tales. This Joe Kent situation is interesting. My view is he should never have had this job in the first place. Now they say he's under FBI investigation for leaking classified material. What do you make of this whole Joe Kent mess?
Well, Joe Kent should never have been serving in that position. I mean, obviously, in his resignation letter, he said that he did not believe that there was a threat to the United States from Iran. Not only is there a threat, there's an ongoing threat that's been going on for years, as we just heard from the CIA director. And for somebody like Joe Kent, who was in charge for counterterrorism to protect the American people, to not acknowledge that the Iran regime is the head of the snake when it comes to terrorism and threats to the American people is just, I mean, it's hard to wrap your mind around. And the other thing, Scott, that I thought was just appalling in his letter is he really peddled this conspiracy theory that the Israelis and their lobby, Jewish people, were the ones that were behind this, saying that President Trump does not have agency here, that he's been manipulated and controlled. I mean, that kind of idea, it is galling that somebody held that idea and served in that position of government. We had signs, though, Scott. Joe Kent has been peddling this stuff and has been hanging out in this Tucker Carlson ecosystem, I think, for too long.
Yeah, this was not a good hire and probably was left on the payroll for far too long. And he tried to embarrass the president on the way out the door. Well, we'll see what this leak investigation uncovers. Regarding the war effort, obviously our ally here is Israel. They're our ally. They're not in charge of us, but we are aligned with them. President Trump got asked about this today in the Oval Office. Let's listen to that in cut number 8.
You talked to Prime Minister Netanyahu about attacking the oil and gas fields.
Yeah, I did. I told him don't do that, and he won't do that. We didn't discuss. We do. We're independent. We get along great. It's coordinated, but on occasion he'll do something, and if I don't like it, and so we're not doing that anymore.
On this gas fields attack, Rebecca, what do you make of the president's a rather lengthy statement that he issued last night, and where do we stand on this? Oil markets and energy markets today are going crazy.
So 2 things. One, I do think that the United States with Israel is working together really well, hand in glove, on this Operation Epic Fury against the Iranians. Israel has been an incredible ally for the United States. The intelligence that Israel has makes it so competent for us to achieve really taking out these regime leaders in Iran. And so we're working really well with them. I think President Trump made it clear that this operation against this oil field, the Israelis struck in a very limited way, this massive oil field in Iran. And he said, we're not the ones who did it. I don't think that necessarily means we didn't know they were going to do it because of how closely we are working inside Iran. But I think President Trump's statement after that was really important, where he said, but look, if Iran continues to hit oil infrastructure in our Gulf partners, the Emiratis, the Qataris, Bahrain, Saudis, that we will kind of take the gloves off. We have the ability to do that for them and really take the life out of the regime totally. That's how they get their finances. But we don't want to, Scott, because that oil field still provides the domestic electricity for the Iranian people. And our war is not with the Iranian people. We do want the country to exist after this. We just want them to have a regime that can collaborate with the United States and not be an enemy of ours.
That voice you're hearing, Rebecca Heinrichs from the Hudson Institute, our official national security expert of the Scott Jennings Show. I want to shift gears quickly, Rebecca, get your thoughts on Cuba. A lot going on down there, a lot of social unrest. The economy is teetering. They're having issues with the electrical grid. What's your outlook on Cuba? Do we think we're going to see major change? Would the government come down there in short order? What's your view?
I think so. I think it's teetering. We really are kind of squeezing. We, the United States, are squeezing the Cubans, obviously. I mean, this is the way to think about this is obviously the communist regime. The Cubans collaborate with the Chinese Communist Party. Cuba has really been a surveillance outpost for China, collaborate with the Russians. And President Trump does not want these narco-communist terrorist states in our hemisphere. And so right now, we really are squeezing them economically and pressuring the leaders of that country to step aside. There's some indication that might happen. I think the Cubans are looking at what happened with Maduro in Venezuela, with what the United States and our overwhelming military competency against the Iran regime. And I would suspect that they are looking for a way to step aside to do something to essentially save the country from the United States taking military action there, which I don't think we're going to need to do.
Rebecca Heinrichs from the Hudson Institute, thanks for coming by with your expertise. We'll have you back soon. We appreciate your insights greatly. Quick word from our friends at Relief Factor. If you're already taking Relief Factor, I have good news for you. The formula is even better. You're going to get even more benefit. If you are not taking Relief Factor, but you are considering it, now is the time. They have added a new premium black pepper extract to the formula. This helps your body absorb the nutrients and the ingredients even better. That means an even greater relief from aches and pains. Listen, I know you've been hearing me talk about Relief Factor for months. We've used it in the Jennings household. We're quite happy with it. Customers across the country have been telling us their stories. If you want to get rid of aches and pains, the way to get into this is the 3-week quick start. It's $19.95. You go to relieffactor.com or call 1-800-4RELIEF. Relief Factor. How would it feel to be out of pain? You might just get the answers. from Relief Factor. When we come back, John Levine from the Free Beacon is here to talk about Rama Duwaji. That's Mom Donnie's wife. Oh, the social media, it's not good. More on that after this.
You've heard the narratives. Now get the truth. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Well, the hits keep on coming for Zoran Mamdani and his wife, Rama Duwaji. If you've been following this story the last several days, first, the First Lady of New York City was caught liking posts that celebrated or downplayed the events of October the 7th, and then it was revealed that she had done illustrations of an anti-Israel activist who raged about, quote, Jewish supremacist vampires. Now the trifecta is here. An old social media account of hers has been found exposing more pro-terrorism posts and even some stuff that most people would consider racist. Coming back to the Scott Jennings Show today, the reporter who is on top of it all, John Levine. He writes for the Washington Free Beacon. John, thanks for being here. Your latest headline is, quote, Zoran Mamdani's wife celebrated Palestinian terrorists, including plane hijacker, in social media posts from early adulthood. Tell us about it, John.
Well, this is a classic example of if it walks like a duck and sounds like a duck, it's a duck. And you mentioned the other examples of her liking certain comments and posts and working with noted anti-Semites who call Jews vampires and ghouls and cockroaches. And now we have old social media accounts, Tumblr and X, from when she was a young adult. They range from the age of 15 to 20, where she basically posts all of these images celebrating terrorists. One of them is a woman named Layla Khalid. She was a Palestinian terrorist for the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. It's a U.S. designated terrorist organization. And she's famous for being the first woman to ever hijack a plane. So she broke that Palestinian glass ceiling in 1969 and then again in 1970. In 1970, she stormed the cockpit of an El Al flight with a grenade. And she, Rama Duwaji, at the age of 20, posted an image of her with this woman's famous line, "I'm willing to die for whatever my cause requires me," or something to that effect. There was another image of a woman named Shadia Ghazala, and she was a Palestinian terrorist, also for that same terrorist organization that made bombs, and she was actually killed when a bomb she was making exploded in her home. And Zoran Mamdani's wife reposted tweets on X celebrating her. And then she also just casually used the N-word and used slurs about gay people and also said white people invented Al-Qaeda. It was just a stream of insane, nonsensical ramblings, pro-terrorist ramblings. And sooner or later, like it becomes inescapable that she supports terrorism, and these are not one-offs, and these are not things she just did in her youth, because they align with her views today. And certainly it appears the views of her husband.
Now, are there any denials of any of this coming out of Gracie Mansion, or have they pretty much admitted, yeah, it's her?
Well, they haven't said a word to me. I gave them 3.5 hours to comment. They ignored me. They haven't said a word today at all. Mamdani just had a press conference talking about the creation of his Department of Community Safety, which is his social worker squad to replace the police. Many reporters asked questions, not a single question about this issue. And it just goes to show you that the media in New York City is just regime media. It's far left progressive, every single outlet from top to bottom. And you know, he has control over who he calls on. So he didn't get a question about this. And it was just a disgraceful performance by my former colleagues in that city.
Now, some people say, well, look, she's not elected. This is just a spouse, and she was young, and so on and so forth. So why don't we just leave her alone? But I got to tell you, John, I'm old enough to remember when they were trying to impeach Justice Samuel Alito because his wife hung up a flag of something that George Washington used as a symbol during the Revolutionary War. They had story after story after story about this flag on their porch, and then Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez herself filed articles of impeachment against Justice Alito. My view is this is fair game because I think, as you pointed out, these are her views. Mamdani has never really shied away from these views. These posts that you've uncovered tell us a lot about how they see the world, don't they?
Hey, Scott, if this was a Republican, I mean, do I even need to finish that sentence? And obviously the Alito case you mentioned is very valid. Remember the Covington kids? The poor child just looked at somebody and
Know
had a
him well.
smirk on his face, and they killed him for that. I remember one of the Parkland shooting survivors, Kyle Kashuv, also as a young teenager, 15, 16 years old, had private messages where he used the N-word. Harvard rescinded his admission. These people give no grace to the other side, none whatsoever. And I'm not in the business of extending grace there.
Well, you are in the business of uncovering the facts and uncovering information that other reporters and media outlets refuse to cover, and that's why we have you on the show, and we're grateful for you. That is John Levine, Washington Free Beacon. The story is Mamdani's wife celebrated Palestinian terrorist, ... Look it up on the Washington Free Beacon. We're going to take a break. Thanks for being here, John. When we come back, the latest on the NCAA scoreboard. It's wild already. And we've got more news after this on The Scott Jennings Show.
Now, for America's favorite pundit, it's Scott Jennings.
Okay, we have our first final in the NCAA tournament today. TCU, the 9 seed, has defeated Ohio State by 2 points, 66-64, a barn burner of a game to get the tournament rolling. At the half, Louisville leads South Florida 37-27. At the half, Wisconsin by 2 over High Point. That's a 5-12 game, 41-39 in favor of Wisconsin. Nearly done over on the Nebraska-Troy tilt, and Nebraska crushing Troy right now, 76-47. So the tournament off to a great start here on March Madness Thursday. And I do also want to put in one more word. I give it to you a couple of times every show because I feel like you want to do this and you need the push. This is the push. Pick up the phone. Start the texting. You will text. You will. Look into my eyes. You will text the word cruise to 94878. You will visit scottjenningshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. Why? Because you want to go on vacation with me in November, and Mike Gallagher will be there, and Larry O'Connor from Town Hall will be there. The Gulf of America cruise this November. It's a week cruise, luxury ship, great destinations, beautiful stuff to do. It's going to be amazing. And we want you to get your cabin. Text the word cruise to 94878 or visit scottjenningshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner. We need you there. We want you there. We'll have fun if we all go together. It's the Scott Jennings Show on Salem. We're on Thursday, March the 19th here, and more education talk. And this is important. A recent Gallup poll found that confidence in higher education has fallen from 57% in 2015 to just 36% a couple of years ago. At the same time, only 35% of Americans now say that a college degree is very important. That is down from 75% in 2010. Many people believe and are correct that liberal politics and ideologies have taken over our campuses. You know, in 1995, the liberal to conservative faculty ratio was 2-to-1. Now it's like 6-to-1. And the rigor on these traditional campuses is all but gone. Students now study roughly 12 to 14 hours a week. In the 1960s, it was 24 hours a week. At Harvard and Yale, 80+% of all grades are now A- or above. However, there is good news, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. There are people taking action to reverse these trends, and founded in 2021, by Niall Ferguson, Joe Lonsdale, Barry Weiss, and a few others. One of those things is the University of Austin, and it is taking a new approach to reverse all of these trends in higher education, going back to basics, focusing on outcomes and success and not indoctrination. The University of Austin, in our opinion here at the Scott Jennings Show, is creating a new path for higher education. And joining us now is the president of the University of Austin, Carlos Carvalho. Carlos, good to see you, my friend. Welcome into the Scott Jennings Show.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Really glad you're here because your story is incredible. You had a tenured, endowed position at one of the wealthiest public universities in America, and you blew it all up to come run a startup university, the University of Austin, with 150 kids. Tell us why you did it.
Well, after many years of being inside of an ideological monoculture that creates, as I was looking at your previous segment, that creates the product of that are the Zohan Mamdanis and his wives of the world, right? I was tired, and it was clear to me that reform from inside was very difficult. Those are very administrative bureaucracies that becomes incredibly difficult to change and maneuver. So the opportunity to try to build anew from scratch, focusing on the things that really matter, focusing on what the universities are about, was too great of an opportunity to pass.
Your family history is really interesting to me. Your father was a Brazilian Navy officer who fought the communists, and you have said that that experience shaped your worldview. Tell us about that. Tell us how that experience led you to where you are today.
I mean, if you grew up in the 80s in Brazil at a time where and to this day, Brazil still fights many elements of socialism and so on. But, in the 80s was a time where things were really serious on that, 70s and 80s. And America was always this pinnacle of hope for us, right? So in a family that was directly involved on trying to fight these forces, America was an example to follow, was something that symbolized what was possible in the world. And in some ways, by the end of the 80s, when it seemed like we had won, and eventually I find myself with the opportunity to come to America, I was like, okay, that's it, right? We won. The good ideas of the world have won. I get to go to America now, and this is going to be fantastic. And many years later, I find myself finding the same type of battles inside of the American greatest institutions, which was a very discouraging thing. And I think that gives me even extra motivation to be fighting the fight that we're in right now. The notion that I've seen more closely than most Americans what the results are of this terrible ideology that permeates our institutions.
You and I had a chance, Carlos, to talk about how it works at the University of Austin the other day. I was amazed at all of it, of all of what you were telling me. First of all, when a kid applies to the University of Austin, the application takes 4 minutes. There's no essays or resumes. All you do is consider test scores. And that's how you decide the 150 kids that are going to come to the University of Austin. Tell us about that method. Is it working? What kind of test scores are we talking about here on campus?
So right now we're looking for two things. We look at the SATs, CLTs, and ACTs, standard tests that most high school kids in America will take. We also look at AP scores if you had some. But we have an automatic threshold. If you are above a certain level in any of those tests, you're in automatically, no questions asked. We give you a decision right away. So why we're doing this? We're looking for the most talented, period. We don't want to encourage kids to massage their CVs, to be spending time with consultants, spending time in their 4 years of high school trying to pad a dossier in order to convince a college over many different, it's just like something that became a terrible situation for lots and lots of young adults in the country going through this experience, right? So we want to make sure that we send a signal to the world that all that matters is your skills. I don't want to know anything else. And of course, if you love what we're doing, come. And that's basically one reason why we want to be very explicit about what we are and how we're doing this. So we are an institution that is first and foremost very patriotic. Our vision is that we are here to help educate the citizens and leaders that will take America into the next 250 years of greatness. So that's it. So if you believe to be one of those people, come join us. And all I need to know at that point is how strong and how ready you are for the challenge that we're going to put in front of you. And that challenge, as you referenced in your preamble, is going to be challenging because we're not going to be tolerating 12 hours of study a week. We're aiming for 50 hours of study a week. We're bringing back rigor and the pure meritocratic system that used to be the standard in colleges in America.
Smartest kids with the best test scores, you're putting them through a rigorous academic environment. You're agnostic of politics here. You care about American exceptionalism, which is a rare attitude or a rare goal, I think, for higher education in the United States right now. And interestingly, you let one of these kids in, no tuition, you take no government money. Tell me how that model works, by the way, because you get the kids with the great test scores. They don't have to pay any tuition. They come to Austin and they get this amazing education. How does it work financially for you?
So our vision is that we want to make sure that the most talented come no matter their level of financial success in life, if they cannot afford or anything like that, right? So we want everybody, the best in. But the other reason for our approach to be a free tuition institution is that we don't see this as giving them the education for free. We see this as an investment in them. Our model works if they accrue the value of our education in the future. We hope they'll support us in the future. That's how this model is going to work, right? I will need their help financially in the future. But right now, I don't want them to pay ahead of time without accruing the value that this wonderful education that we believe is going to be very valuable to them provides them with the success that we hope that they will achieve, right? So there's aligned incentives between the university and the students. My job is to make sure, and that's why, again, I can put them through a rigorous education, because I'm going to tell them, listen, this is good for me as well, not only for you, but I know it's good for me because that's going to help you succeed in the future, and that's what I need from you, because my success in the future is your success in the future. So we're the only university that can say that right now, right? We're not charging anybody $100,000 to attend our campus, and we're very thankful to have a number of supporters in the philanthropic side that allows us to build this bridge between now and the time where we have enough graduates and enough success in their lives in order to support this thing going forward.
That voice you're hearing on the Scott Jennings Show is the president of the University of Austin, Carlos Carvalho. Now, Carlos, you got 150 kids. This is a true startup idea. You've got some really impressive names that are backing you. When you get these kids on campus, these smart kids with these great test scores, what kind of educational environment are they in? They're in classes and they're encountering people from the real world. Give us an idea of their experience that's going to prepare them for life after university.
Right. So one of the pillars of our education is a very strong core curriculum grounded on the ideas of Western civilization. So students have to go through a very, very serious great books curriculum where they explore the journey of the West all the way to the culmination of the American founding. So that's like it's a great like broad education that we view as a necessary condition for one to be successful in a world that's ever changing, right? So a great understanding of where we stand as a civilization is part of it. At the same time, they're being educated in economics. They're being educated in quantitative methods. They're being educated in computer science. So we're providing them with the modern tools that are needed for a modern citizen to succeed in the real world. That goes alongside with a lot of freedom for them to explore their own passion. So we have not only passion, but their goals, right? So we have what we call the Polaris Project, which is something that allows students to, from the very beginning of their experience, to start preparing themselves to what it is that they want to do next in life. And that could be various things: start a company, get a job, go to the military, become a teacher, become a journalist, become a lawyer. And in each one of those situations, we try to provide them with apprenticeships, mentorships, exposure to the real world to get them really ready for the next step. Again, going back to our financial model, I am fully vested in getting them really ready for the next step, right? So I cannot afford to waste their time while in college. Provide them with an education that's not going to be really useful for them in order to take the next step. So it's a combination of a classical education with a very practical preparation for the real world in day one.
Carlos, we got about 30 seconds here. If a parent out there has an ambitious, smart 16, 17-year-old, where do they find you on the internet? What do they do next?
So they go to uaustin.org. That's our website, uaustin.org. As you said, it takes 4 minutes to apply to our school. We're looking for great students, great patriotic students that want to join this rebellion that we like to call ourselves. You get the answer within minutes, perhaps, or if not a day, whether you got in or not. And remember, it's free. So all you need to do is to tell me a few things about you, and hopefully to see you in Austin.
Carlos Carvalho, the president of the University of Austin, UATX in our parlance. It is uaustin.org. This is a really fascinating experiment, and it's really changing, I think, the game in higher education. Carlos, we look forward to having you back in the near future. We're going to take a quick break. First, a word from our partners at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. They are taking care of the most vulnerable in the Holy Land as Operation Epic Fury rages, Operation Roaring Lion from Israel. The missiles are falling. People are going to bomb shelters. They need emergency essentials, life-saving food, first aid. The people who are most vulnerable here, the sick, the elderly, children, and families, they depend on the fellowship. And they depend on us to stand in prayerful support of the fellowship and of the Jewish people and to stand with Israel. I would recommend to go to supportifcj.org, supportifcj.org. Stand with the people of Israel as they face down these Iranian terrorists today. One more block to go. TSA airport chaos. We'll look at it next on The Scott Jennings Show. Stay with us.
When he's not in the Oval Office or owning the libs on CNN, he's here with us. It's The Scott Jennings Show.
It is Thursday, March 19th, home stretch of Common Sense for the American people, and we are getting reports from across America. Airports are in chaos in many states across this country. We have TSA lines out the door in some places. Flights are being delayed. And to discuss where we stand with this chaos caused by the Democrats keeping the Department of Homeland Security shut down, our guest is the Deputy Administrator and Chief of Staff of the TSA in Washington, D.C. His name is Adam Stahl. Adam, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show. Thank you for keeping America updated. Give us an up-to-the-minute report. What's going on in the airports right now? What do travelers need to know as long as the Department of Homeland Security is shut down?
Yeah, well, first off, Scott, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. So the current state of the aviation security system is challenging. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We're seeing substantial impacts to wait times across the United States. The security and the quality of the security screening system is very much intact, but we are seeing significant pain and inconvenience when it comes to wait times, 3-4 hour wait times at airports like Houston Hobby, Atlanta, JFK, and across the ecosystem at large. So it's definitely problematic, and it's certainly going to get worse before it gets better if Congress, specifically Senate Democrats, to your point, do not act soon.
Yeah, we're in day 33 of this shutdown. So if you're a traveler out there right now, I mean, do you have any advance warning about whether your home airport is going to be bad on any certain day? I mean, are you all publishing any kind of real-time data about TSA lines? I think it's possible you could show up at the airport and it's fine, but it's also possible you could show up and, there could be a line out to the parking garage, which is what happened to me at LaGuardia the other day. Is it just sort of random, or do you have advance warning about airports that are going to be really suffering at any given time?
Yeah, so we're doing everything we can to kind of really signal and provide that information to specific airports, specific airport authorities and carriers also. And so a lot of folks that are traveling with the large airlines, they'll receive intermittent updates in terms of wait times, but also if, they'll have websites particularly for each airport. They'll have wait times kind of in real time, but it will very much vary airport by airport. We're doing the best that we can, but kind of to your point, these numbers are so fluid and unpredictable. There are days where we can track pretty accurately, but there are definite sudden spikes that are unpredictable as well. So it's hard to predict when people are going to call out or not call out. So again, we're doing the best we can, but it's certainly an imperfect science.
So these TSA agents, and I encounter them all the time, they've now missed 2 paychecks. They'll soon miss a third if the shutdown continues. What's happening to them, Adam? They're not showing up for work, I presume, because they have to go take other jobs or do side gigs to make ends meet while their paychecks aren't coming in from the federal government.
Yeah, exactly. It's a frankly financially dire situation. In my opinion, it's unacceptable, and also equally unsustainable for them. They can't afford to come into work. And if they can't afford to come into work, they're quitting altogether to find alternate jobs to make ends meet. And so we've already seen over 400 officers, altogether quit. And this is the second extended shutdown over the past 6 months. And so, again, this is going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And we're going to continue to see folks call out. And that's going to have long-term ramifications for the aviation security screening workforce, not only today, but in the months to come.
So we know we have some airports that have very long lines. There's a lot of chaos in a few places. At some of the smaller airports, Adam, where you don't have that much staff, are we on the brink of a situation where certain airports may have to close until the shutdown is over?
And that's what we're surveying now. We're going to continuously make these determinations on an airport by airport basis. But you mentioned, and I've told several outlets, these airports across they have few staff. If 3 or 4 staff call up, have temporarily called
I tell you what, I think we're losing Adam's connection. So why don't we do this? Let's take that down. That is Adam Stahl. He is the chief of staff. I know he's traveling right now. He is the chief of staff and deputy administrator of the TSA. But what he was saying there, if you couldn't make it out, is that yes, at some of the smaller airports that have less staff, if we end up in a staffing shortage, it's possible that airports and smaller places might have to close soon. The bottom line is, as long as this shutdown continues, you're going to have more TSA agents who have to leave their jobs altogether. They can't come to work. They have to provide for their families, and that's going to lead to long lines and even more chaos as you travel. Well, that brings us to the end of today's Scott Jennings Show. We're grateful for your being here. We'll be back tomorrow broadcasting live from, once again, Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. We're looking forward to being down there one more time. Common sense for the American people. See you then.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.